Well, welcome to this workshop focused on developing a workship community. Here we are, an opportunity to connect with Pastor Bill Berg, lead pastor at New Hope Community Church. We're excited to have you as a part of this session and would like to provide an overview of where we're heading today. There's emphasis on the role that work plays in the life of the church and life of the community is a vital one. It's really a reminder that work is not just about us, it's about a we mentality. How are we taking the flourishing of our community seriously from a kingdom of God perspective? I'd like to just briefly provide an overview of Bethel Seminary and Work with Purpose and what we're doing. I'm Justin Irving and serving as your moderator today of this session. I serve in a variety of roles administratively and teaching in the area of leadership as well here at the seminary. Of course, if you are looking at seminary education, we'd be delighted to have you take a look at Bethel Seminary and talk to one of our admissions counselors or one of our faculty and staff. We'd be honored to serve you in that way. Work with Purpose is one of the things we do around Bethel Seminary. It's an initiative of the institution that's focused on equipping the church to effectively engage in the ministry of everyday life and the ministry of everyday work. Certainly we do that with seminary students, future pastors who are preparing in the seminary context. We're also doing that with current pastors who serve in the regions surrounding Bethel Seminary here in St. Paul and in San Diego, and through our network of churches. We just want you to be aware of Work with Purpose and the resources that we provide. We certainly do events like this through our online sessions to help equip you and give you insight into how you and your church can pay attention to these themes connected to the integration of faith and work. We also have a variety of resources on our website. We'll share that website with you at the end of our time together. And if you are near one of our campuses in San Diego or St. Paul, we also have live events that we communicate, and you just need to sign up for Work with Purpose's email list if you'd like to be notified about the events that are happening in your area. Well, part of what we like to do is to expose you, people interested in this theme, to practitioners who really get the faith-work conversation. Oftentimes, there can be a tendency to think of our lives in segmented ways. We want to push towards a view of discipleship that is more whole life in its orientation, that takes seriously what's happening Sunday through the work week and having our faith integrated in every dimension of our life together. Pastor Bill Berg and the community of New Hope Community Church are thinking about these things in thoughtful ways, not just at a level of theology, but also in how is this practiced? How do you care about these things in the life of your church and in the life of your community? So at this point, I'd like to hand things over to Bill Berg, our guest today, to give us some insights on what Bill and the team at New Hope are doing in the integration of faith and work in their area. Bill, thanks for joining us. We invite you to the table now.
Good. All right, well, it's great to be with everybody out there. I appreciate the opportunity to share what God is doing in my life and through Work with a Purpose. And I want to just give you a little bit overview of where we're going to be heading over my time here. I'll just give you a little bit of a history of New Hope Community Church, work as worship, secondly, and then thirdly, work as we, not I. How do you develop a worship community where worship moves beyond just Sunday throughout the rest of the week in different areas of our life? And then I'm hoping through this time too that you'll have a lot of practical ideas that you can walk away with and just say, man, I'm going to steal that, I'm going to borrow that. And if any time after this or whatever you need to connect with me on further questions about how you can maybe implement some of these ideas, I'm more than happy to help you do that. So I appreciate the opportunity. But I want to start out with a quote from Bernard Bailey. He was a physicist. He made the statement, when they discover the center of the universe, a lot of people will be disappointed to discover they are not it. And I think the challenge in our world and even within our church is that we still are very much self-consumed, and our world revolves around us. And so my passion is to move my people from looking inward to looking outward, to viewing the church as something that happens on a Sunday or Wednesday night or within a small group, to what happens throughout the week. And so let me just give you a little bit of history over, first of all, New Hope Community Church and who we are. So I need to set up the clicker here, and oh, there it is, right there. All right, so let me start here and just talk about us as a history. When I was called to New Hope, it's a church that I planted. I wasn't viewing it as a call to the church, but a call to the county, to the cities within the county. In '92, I was invited to be the youth pastor at First Baptist Church in Cambridge, and I started there as youth pastor. About 5 years in, the senior pastor asked me to start an alternative service within the church itself. My wife and I prayed about it, we started it, and we opened it, the very first service, in 1998 in the multi-purpose room. During that time, God blessed it, and we outgrew the multi-purpose room a couple times. And so then in 2004, we planted the church in the local high school, which was just a mile away from the mother church. And so we were in there for 11 years, and in 15, we built on 25 acres of land, just 1 mile outside of the community. And then a year ago, this last Christmas Eve, we opened a second site south of us in the community that was south of us. And then currently we're planning on opening a third site in the community that is 10 miles north of us, which would allow us then to be in every city within our county. And so that's our desire, that's our goal, is to bring Jesus to the county and beyond. I want to share with you just briefly our vision to see Sandy County and beyond, filled with the presence of Jesus. How do we get there? Well, it's our daily mission to develop passionate followers of Jesus Christ. And so that is just a brief overview of New Hope. So I want to look at then work as worship, okay? So our opportunity to worship God is not determined by a church event or a ministry event, but should be characteristic of our daily living in every aspect of our life. We've all heard 1 Corinthians 10:31. So whether you eat or drink, whatever you do it all for the glory of God. I love how William Barclay puts it. He says, a man may say, I'm going to church to worship God, but he should be able to say, I'm going to the factory, the shop, the office, the school, the garage, the locomotive shed, the mine, the shipyard, the garden, to worship God. Worship is in every aspect of our life, and worship as well is within our work. I often respond to people when they say, oh, where is your church located? I typically respond by telling them that my church is located in aisle 3, stocking the shelves at Walmart. My church is located downtown in Minneapolis in the IDS Tower, 3rd floor in accounting. My church is right now between here and Louisiana, trucking and delivering produce. And so really the church is, I think we all understand, is in a location, isn't brick and mortar, but the church is the people. And so this whole idea that as the church goes out during the week, the church goes out and has opportunity to worship God through what they put their hands to. And I think it's critical for us as the spiritual leaders, the shepherds of our people, to help them get the bigger aspect, the bigger picture of what worship really means. And I think, too, if we look throughout the whole Bible, and if we look especially in the Old Testament, and Jesus even, we see him in the Gospels with the religious leaders, when God was sort of ticked off, he wasn't ticked off so much because they were bringing their tithes and offerings, or they were showing up at the sanctuary or synagogue. He was ticked off because they were disregarding how they did business. They were disregarding the poor. They were disregarding the orphans and the widows. And so God sees our whole life as worship. So how do we move then from here to developing a worship community and to look at this whole idea of work as we, not I? You know, so often we look at our work as it's all about me, it's all about what I need, but how do we develop a worship community of people that recognize that their work is greater than just themselves? And so I want to look at, first of all, how work as a spiritual blessing for God, how work is as a spiritual blessing for God. And scriptural passage for this, Ephesians 6:7, work as you would work for Christ. Do what God wants you to do with all your heart. Be happy as you work. Do your work as for the Lord, not for men. You know, for us to be true Christ followers, we cannot ignore any sphere of our time-bound, material, expensive existence. And we can't certainly, in this, ignore our work. I think we all understand, and Work with a Purpose recognizes, and they put the number out there that, man, we spend 100,000 hours of our life in labor. And so we have all kinds of opportunity to bring worship to God through our labor. I like what modern Reformed thinker Abraham Cooper puts it. He puts it this way. He says, "There's not a square inch in the whole domain of our human existence over which Christ, who is sovereign over all, does not cry, mine." God is our creator, and he owns it all, and he owns every aspect of our life. So I believe whether it's our finances, to our thought life, whether it's as Christ followers, our sexual life, to our parenting, to how we neighbor, to how we put our hands to our work, Jesus owns it all. And he died for it all on the cross, and he's desiring to redeem it all. And so that's critical. And so a second point here under worship as we, not I, is work as a spiritual blessing for the group. A familiar passage again, Philippians 2, 3, and 4. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, rather in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. And so this is really critical. This is important. You know, if you are an employer, what is your responsibility? Your responsibility is to make sure that you are caring for and looking out for the best interests of your employees. It's not all about I, it's about we. And there's many scriptures, which I'm not going to get into, where God calls the employer, the owner, to take care of his employees. That's important. But then as an employee, what is our responsibility? Our responsibility is to work with diligence. And there's scripture that talks about, hey, just don't work with diligence when the employer is watching you, but when the employer is off on vacation or is not around the office or is not around the manufacturing floor. What does your work look like? Work for God rather than for man. And in reality, we need to recognize that work is a spiritual blessing for the group. Because if the employer takes care of the employee, they'll prosper. And if the employee does well and produces their product or sales or services well, then the employer will prosper. So the group as a whole prospers when we do our work as unto the Lord, when we recognize that he calls us to do it with excellence and to bring him glory through whatever we do. You know, we see the picture of this really in 1 Corinthians 12, right, with the body. Hey, the eye can't say to the hand, I don't need you. You know, the hand can't say to the leg, I don't need you. I mean, employer-employee relationships are critical. They need each other. And so this whole idea that as we do our work as unto the Lord, we are a spiritual blessing to the group. It's awesome. So let's look then at C, and work as a spiritual blessing for the greater good. 1 Corinthians 10:24 says, nobody should seek his own good, but the good of others. I love the picture we get of Jesus and his life and what he reflected to us and how we are supposed to do our work, as in Matthew 20:28, when it says, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to lay his life down as a ransom. You know, this whole idea that as we go out into the community, we as Christ followers have this great opportunity to serve the greater good of those around us, to put a towel over our arm and go out as servants in the world as Jesus did. I like how Gene Edward Veith said it in this illustration. He says this: when I go to the restaurant, the waitress who brings me my meal, the cook in the back who prepared it, the delivery men, the wholesalers, the workers in the food processing factories, the butchers, the farmers, the ranchers, and everyone else in the economic food chain are all being used by God to give me this day my daily bread. You know, I think so often our people don't recognize how incredible and important their work is, and they sort of just put it down as gotta do, a have to, but it's so critical. I use personal illustrations just from my own life on how important what people do for their work and their excellence in it has impacted me. So a year ago, Christmas Eve, we opened our second campus. This summer, we had our charter school approach us, and they wanted to rent out our campus and use it for school for 5 months while they were adding on to their building. And so it was a great opportunity for us to serve the community, come alongside. Man, we had 120 kids and teachers in our church every day, and parents walking through, and it gave us great opportunities to serve them. But I remember one day that we didn't have air conditioning downstairs. It was hot. And so I said, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get fans for every room and that. And I went out and bought those, and they were oscillating fans. And I was putting them together. But one fan didn't have one little pin. It was a little pin about an 1/8 inch long that I needed to complete the fan so that it would oscillate. And man, that affected my day. That affected my ability as far as my time, my ability to get and cool off a room for these teachers and students and that. So whoever was in the factory counting pieces or making sure a part was in that box, you know, in their mind, they thought, oh, what's the big deal? No big deal, and this and that. But boy, in my mind, it's a big deal because it impacted my life, and it rearranged, and I had to jerry-rig and figure out how to fix the fan. And so what we do, regardless of what it is so critical. Every time that I'm out in the community or I have opportunity to visit with my people in my congregation on a one-on-one basis, I like to talk about their work and how critical it is to worshiping and bringing glory to God. A real-life example was recently, about 6 months ago, I was walking through Bethel Seminary here, and I was walking through the hallway, and there was a lift in the faculty area that was slowly coming down. I couldn't see who was in the lift because of the ceiling, but when I was walking by and this huge lift was coming down, I knew that somebody was in it, obviously doing some work, but as it was coming down, as I walked by, I thought, man, that looks sort of fun. Well, I was studying in another room, and I was surprised. One of the guys from our church was in that lift doing all the electrical work. And so he came in, he said, hey, I saw you walk by and just caught the back of you and that. And I thought, hey, I'd say hi in that. And then I said, well, hey, what are you doing for lunch? Well, I brought my lunch. And I said, hey, I brought my lunch. Let's visit. And over lunch, I had the opportunity to talk to him about saying, hey, do you realize the work that you're doing here, how critical it is to the comfort, to the care of others, the ability for people to be taught here, for this institution to run well, for people not to be distracted from their work because they got to figure out lighting or electrical or whatever. And he was shocked. He was just like, oh, I just never thought about it that way, and how critical that is. Last week I was at my daughter's basketball game, and I got there a little early because she had to be there early, so I just hung out. but one of the gals from our church, who's a custodian, came walking through, and I just said, "Hey, Kathleen, how you doing?" And we hugged and we were visiting that, and then and at the end I said, "Hey, Kathleen, I just want to thank you for the work that you do here. You don't realize that by making sure things are clean, in order, and that it allows teachers, students to have a great quality of education and learning and teaching here, and what you do matters, and it's critical." And she just got teary-eyed. She just was like, "Wow, I just never thought. I mean, it's a job. I'm a custodian, but how critical, how big it is." And then I just prayed a blessing over her and her work and her influence on the teachers and students there. And so it was great. I'm going to just give one last example, because it's critical. Last year I was at the Global Leadership Summit at a local church south of us there, and I was sitting out at the picnic table with a variety of people, but off to the side of me was Ben, and Ben and I struck up a conversation. I didn't know Ben, but I said, "Ben, well, are you here through your church?" Or, "But no, I'm here through work. I work for the electric company and that." And so I said, "Well, what do you do?" He says, "Well, I just go out and do, energy studies and that kind of stuff. And I really don't like my job. I don't see it as very important and that, but I just, I got a wife and kids at home and I'm in transition and all that." I had this great opportunity just to talk to Ben and just say, "Ben, do you realize that what you do is allowing this whole global leadership summit to happen? Like, if we had no electricity, nothing would be happening today. And how critical what you do to serve people, how critical it is. And when you do that, it brings glory, it brings pleasure to your God. It's great." And I mean, a light turned on, and he was just encouraged. He recognized a greater worth in what he did during this week. So I'm going to get off that soapbox, and we're going to continue on here, because I want to look at now just some practical ways of how do we then move to, I want to show a video. I want to show a video of some individuals that I just interviewed from our church as far as their idea of work and worship. So I'll give you a little break from me, and we'll go on to them. All right, so I think when we perform our work as a spiritual blessing to God, and when we perform our work as a spiritual blessing to the group, and when we perform our work as a spiritual blessing to the greater good, I think really we are fulfilling the two greatest commandments. I mean, we're loving God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and we are loving our neighbor as ourselves. And so I think that's really critical. So I try to instill this biblical approach within our church community on a regular basis. And that's an important piece for me there. And so I want to move on just to hopefully some practical ideas of how is it that you build a worship community that extends outside of Sunday and that. And so let's look at this whole idea of building bridges with the working community. And the first way that I build bridges is by incarnational leadership. Okay, so we see in Philippians chapter 2, this model that Jesus gives us about leaving his comfort zone of heaven, coming down, putting on flesh, putting a towel over his arm, and serving us. And I think that's really, for us as pastors, spiritual leaders, or even just Christ followers, it's a model for us of how we are to live. And so basically, we need to get out of the office of our churches and get out into the community and be Jesus with flesh on in leadership roles. I believe that we as leaders, on how we live our life, so me as the lead pastor, the senior pastor at New Hope Community Church, my life in every area of my life is a microcosm of the macro. What my personal life looks like, I really believe, is what the church will look like. So whether it has to do with, do I have my face before Jesus every morning and I'm in prayer and devotional and remaining in him? Do I love my wife? Am I serving her? Am I dying for her as Christ died for the church? My children, what does that look like? How am I handling my finances, my physical health? How do I view my resources as far as like my stuff? Do I lend it out freely and give it out freely or release it? I believe how I live is how the church as a whole that I'm leading is going to live. So when it comes to building bridges with the working community, what does it look like in my life? So what does it look like in my life is that I tithe 10% or plus of my week into the community in leading in different ways. So I've been involved with BNI, which is Business Network International. It's a group of business individuals that own their own businesses that meet every Wednesday. They actually meet at our church, one of our campuses, but they meet for an hour and a half and do networking and training on how can you lead better in business. And so I've been involved with that piece. But every Wednesday, I get to do a 45-second commercial about New Hope Community Church or just some insightful aspect of living there. And then I get to meet with people outside of that individually, learn more about their business and how can I help them succeed. And then typically, it's usually goes beyond that conversation to life stuff. So it's an awesome way. But again, I'm involved in Rotary International, which is a service organization started in 1903 by 3 businessmen. There's no secret handshakes, nothing under the table there, but it's just basically we want to serve the community in a variety of ways and go out. So every Thursday I have lunch with a variety of business leaders and nonprofit leaders in the community, everything from people running the medical center to the local community college to businesses. So it's a great opportunity just to be out with them and to network and to encourage and build them up. We're involved in the chamber as well. And I don't go to every one of these only. I have staff that attend chamber. We had the chamber at our other campus yesterday. We hosted them, so we had 60 people come through the door in the business community, and we hosted that and stuff. But I had other staff people that attend chamber and engage there at that level. And then personally, when it comes to building bridges within the working community, one of my personal evangelistic efforts is that I go after the leadership within the community, and I invite them into a discipleship group where I invest in them for 3 years. And so right now I have the county attorney, the county sheriff, and then a lieutenant. None of them are from New Hope Community Church, but I know them in the community, and I've invited them in and saying, hey, would you like to do this book study? Would you like to have iron sharpen iron? And then after a 6-week book study, then I invite them in to a 3-year discipleship process. And so I've already been through this a couple times with other community leaders. And then also in the community, we're reaching out and we're going to be planting in a year and a half. I'm starting to meet with those leaders as well. So building bridges in the working community starts with you as an incarnational leader. But then from there, you need to look at your staff and what is it you want to model for them, but what is your expectation? So anybody that we hire onto staff, they come with this realization that you need to volunteer hours within the community. You need to tie back your hours into the community. And so whether it's coaching basketball to sitting on a board, whether it's tutoring at the school, whatever it might be, I want you out of the office. And so when I visit with them one-on-one, I always visit as well of, hey, what are you engaged in the community? And most of us, or most of them, are engaged in something on a regular basis where it's gone on for a few years already, and it's a place where they can really invest. So incarnational leadership, incarnational staff, and then thirdly, an incarnational church as a whole, where building those bridges, I think, are really critical and important. And that's where, with that, we have 20 different partnerships within the community of different nonprofits and different business sectors where we partner with them to make our community great, whether it's the Pregnancy Resource Center, whether it's like right now we partner with New Pathways, which is a homeless shelter. So right now at New Hope Community Church, we have 6 families living in our church for the week. And we do this 8 times a year. And so we partner with the local food shelf we have 25 acres of land. On 3.5 acres of land, we grow corn, sweet corn, and then we sell it on the street corner, and we give all that money to the food shelf. So every $1 we can give them, they can buy $8 of second harvest food. And so roughly every given year, we can produce about $70,000 to $80,000 of buying power for them to supplement that. Now, corn takes a lot of work in that, so this year we switched it out and I decided we're going to do a mud run. So we got the rough and tough mudder against hunger, and so that'll be coming up in June or July. So there's a variety of ways to build bridges with the working community, and that through incarnational leadership, incarnational staff, and incarnational church, giving your people opportunities to be out in the community. So let's look then at this whole idea of developing then cross-sector collaborations. And let me read the definition. These are commitments between or among public, private, and nonprofit institutions in which individuals from partner organizations commit various resources and agree to work collaboratively toward common development goals. And so I talked about our corn that we raised and then gave the money to this food shelf. Well, we work with businesses as well when we do that. So businesses allow us to put our corn stands on their properties so that we can sell it to people going by. We also have businesses in the community where they buy dozens of corn and they give it away to their customers that walk through the door. They give it away to their employees. One local nursing home buys corn every summer from us, and they utilize it within their kitchen. So it's great. And so they recognize that by buying our corn, they're actually giving all that money to the food shelf. So they're making that donation. So it's a collaboration together. Right now I'm developing a collaboration with the school system and the businesses to help feed children in our schools. I'm friends with the superintendent. I took him out to lunch when he arrived in town, and I just asked him, I just said, Ray, what could the local church do to help our students thrive in education? What is the number one challenge? And he said our number one challenge is poverty. Our church or community is located an hour north of the Twin Cities. A lot of people don't recognize that in more a little bit the rural areas that there's poverty, but there definitely is, and quite a bit. So typically half of our schools, half of the students in our schools are on free and reduced lunch and breakfast. And so Ray was talking about this and how kids just not having the proper nutrition, it made it difficult for them to have a good education. And so I reached out to what's called the Sheridan Project down in the Twin Cities and visited with them, and then got other individuals involved, and we met with the school district. And so in a couple of weeks, I have a next meeting with them. It took about a year to get to this point, but we have a meeting now with 2 principals and their counselors, and we are going to be doing a test run this fall by providing food every Friday for students who are in situations where they are dealing with poverty, especially food. And my wife's in the school system. She sees this often. And Andy, who spoke in the video you saw, he sees it. I just asked him, hey, how's your December going in that? And how you're getting ready for the break from school? And he said, it's going great in that, but it's hard because I have so many students that don't look forward to Christmas. Why? Because they're going home and they know that they're not going to have food, or they're going home and it's not a safe environment. And so we are trying to get food into these kids' backpacks. It's very private, but it's a collaboration between the schools, between the churches, and it's a collaboration between then the businesses who come alongside and help pay for the food, and then also the church is helping pay for the food. So there's a variety of opportunities where you can have these cross-sector collaborations. One of them I just want to mention is what we have been doing at New Hope is I'm head of the ministerial in town, and so we've done 2 collaborative sermon series together with 10 to 12 other churches in the community. So 5 years ago, we did this series called Explore Jesus, and then 2 years ago, we did a series called Neighboring, Love Your Neighbor, where 12 churches did the whole same series together, and we did some things together out in the community. And this spring, we're going to be doing a series called 4. And I got the T-shirt up here, and we all just steal stuff or rip things off, and I think there's a few original things out there. But I got this idea when I was down at the Orange Conference, Andy Stanley, last year, and one of their satellite churches, one of the individuals shared that they had these shirts, and it was for Winnetka County, and it was the county the church was in. And they had their people wear these shirts because they wanted people to say, what's that for? What's that shirt about? And just basically, hey, I want people to know what the church is for, because we're always known for what we're against. And so I had one made for everybody in our church. I said, just wear them around. We did a little series around them on how we serve and how we're out in the community there. And then 2 other churches saw them and they wanted them, so we got them for them. But this spring, I put together a whole series, a 5-week series called 4, F-O-R, and it's basically for Sandy County and beyond. And so if we look at the Gospels, every time Jesus stepped into the community, he raised the bar in every aspect of the community. He raised the bar in spiritual destination. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world but lose his life, his soul? He raised the bar in health care. He healed people. In business, he turned over tables, right? Hey, if you do business right, you'll be blessed, and the people who buy from you will be blessed as well. He raised the bar in family. He spoke to marriage and parenting. In education, he taught in the synagogues and on the street corners, and in recreation as well. I believe he, when he played with the children, I think he was probably in the sandbox when he said, hey, let the little children come unto me. He celebrated at weddings, and he pulled his disciples away for rest and rejuvenation. And so I think when the local church is in any community, it should raise the bar in every area of the community. That's the gospel. the gospel impacts every area. And so this is going to be a 5-week series on each of those elements. And with each of those elements, then, we as churches are going to be engaged in our community in different ways. So, for example, in the business sector, we are going to encourage our people, when you go out and do business and you have great customer service, you have purchased a great product, I want you to hashtag for Isani County and put a picture of, man, I was just at Starbucks and Jean gave me this great latte. She did a fabulous job. Man, take a picture of the latte, put it on there and say, man, Starbucks rocked it today in Cambridge or in Isani or wherever. And our business community is going to take notice. They're going to be like, what is going on? We love this. But it's a way for us to say, hey, we are for Isani County. We are for our businesses. And so that's just an example there. Okay? So I want to move on here because of time, and I want to look at encouraging flourishing in the schools. So I talked about the backpack program there, the charter school that met in our South Campus. There, it was an opportunity for us to serve them. We had to do a variety of things to transition the school or the church so that they could have school there, and it was very positive experience for them. Matter of fact, their new school they're in, they wish they were back with us because it was just a great experience. But another way that we encourage flourishing in the schools is that the counselors know that at each school, if there is specific needs that a family has or a student has, they can reach out to us as a church. I have a gal called Bethel on my staff, and all she's hired to do all week long is to take care of crisis situations. And so we are like the second call to social services. So if the family just moved into town, counselors hear about they don't have furniture, they're in need of clothing or whatever, we get a call, and if we can't service them, then we get it out to our people or to the local church or to the businesses to take care of them. But there's opportunities for us to encourage and to help our schools flourish. So an example is this week there's student-teacher meetings happening at night and stuff. So we have an opportunity to bring in pizza for all the teachers and say, hey, you're going to be there all night. You're going to be visiting with students and teachers and that, with parents and stuff. So, hey, let's bring in pizzas for you and then make sure you're fed and taken care of and all that, and just bless the people in our community. And this just isn't the local schools, but it's also the Christian school as well. The community college, how do we come alongside so that our schools are flourishing? Let's look at as well engaging and affirming business. So I talked about BNI, I talked about being involved in the chamber, rubbing shoulders there. A big thing is keeping business local. So we're in a smaller community there. Our community is about 8,000. The other church we have that's south of us, that community is about 6,000. The church that we're going to be planting north of us, that community is only 1,800. But as we start to develop that church plant, anything that we can purchase in town, even though it costs more money, we will buy it in town because we want them to recognize that we are interested in investing here. I had an example of, I was sitting in a children's meeting talking, and we were evaluating our family night, Wednesday night program, and the gal that was doing all the purchasing for the dinners, the families come and eat dinner together and stay together throughout the night, and that gives parents opportunity to invest in their kids spiritually and stay with them instead of doing the drop off and, hey, I'll pick you up after I go to Starbucks for coffee type thing. And she talked about how, hey, I went over to Coburn's and I get some things there, but I go up to Walmart, which is in the next community by us, and I buy the rest of it because I can just save money doing that. And I just said, I really appreciate that. But what I'd really love for you to do is I'd love for you to buy everything at Coburn's, because Coburn's is new in town, and we want them to flourish. We want them to succeed, because if they succeed, our people succeed. We have jobs. We have greater tax base. We have opportunities. So even though it's more expensive, we purchase in town because we're building relationships with the business community, with the owners. Every time I drive down to Hardware Hank, which it's more expensive. It's more expensive. I just bought a ladder from them. I needed a ladder for our other campus. And I knew I spent probably $30 more than driving the 10 miles to the other community. But it's so critical that the owners, that the leaders in our community, that they recognize that we're there because we want to raise the bar in every area of the community. I just got a couple more things and I'm going to be done. But one more example is there's a great study out of Penn State University that I grabbed a hold of a few years back, and I presented it to the chamber and different business groups and the churches. But Penn State did a study on the asset of the church in the local community. And it was interesting because I think you hear it, I hear it, that, you know, oh, the church doesn't pay taxes, usually they got prime property, all that kind of stuff, and, you know, what do they do for the community? Well, it's interesting, the study in Penn State listed all these different areas of value and assets that the local church brought to the community, and stated that if every church would close and leave the community, that the community itself would fold. And so I give the example of New Hope Community Church, just in a sense that, hey, when we hire people, they move to the community, they buy homes, they start paying taxes, they start buying local resources. So we're bringing value to the community. I give the story of, hey, people drive 30 to 45 minutes to get to us, and we're sort of a local hub. But when they drive and come in on Sunday, do you know what happens? Then they stay, and they go out to dinner at a local restaurant, then they get gas in town, and then they go either to the Target or the Walmart or to the Kohl's, and they do their shopping for the week. And so we're drawing all this business into town. And so really the local church is this incredible asset to the business community in so many ways. And so I just love that Penn State and what they laid out there, because it's allowed me then to go back into the business community and say, hey, we're better together, we're more alike than different, and here's what the local church does for the community as a whole here. So we've talked about a variety of things here. We looked at the whole idea of, you know, work is worship, the whole idea that, you know, we are to bring worship to God, we are to bring value to the group, and we are to bring value to the greater good. We looked at the whole idea of different examples of what this could look like within the church, moving it outside of Sunday into the community as a whole. And then hopefully you got some ideas. There's an old book, and just want to close with a couple things. There's an old book, I think it was called Friendship Evangelism years ago, but the only 2 lines I remember of the book was that we as Christ followers are called to radically be different, right? Radically be different. But we're called to radically identify with the community or the county we live in. And that's so critical. Man, we cannot live out in a bubble. And so I spend a lot of my time with my staff, my leadership, and the church as a whole, making sure that they don't turn inward, but that they remain outward. Yeah, recognize that we are called to live not in the world, but of the world, but that we need to radically identify with it and go out and bring influence. So I think that is critical piece. And so I'm just going to leave you with Jeremiah 29, 4 through 8, which I think gives this great picture. This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says to all those I carried into the exile from Jerusalem to the Babylon. Build houses and settle down, plant gardens and eat what they produce. Marry and have sons and daughters. Find wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage, so that they too may have sons and daughters. Increase in number there, do not decrease. Also seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper. And so because New Hope Community Church is out into the community, we are known. I get calls literally every week because people say, hey, people said I should call you, or they said, hey, you're involved in this. So it provides influence. It allows us to be greater light in darkness. And so I really encourage you to steal whatever you can, implement it, and to really consider how to move worship in the worship community from Sunday to the rest of the week. So thanks.
Well, thanks so much, Bill. What a rich example that you've shared from the community in New Hope. At this point, we would typically walk through some questions and a time of interaction. Our time's a little bit limited, and so I'd like to take a moment just to see if we can get on the conversation, an opportunity for people to follow up with you. Is that something you're open to? And if so, would you be willing to share how someone could reach out to you? Of course, they could send a note through Bethel's Work with Purpose team. But if they had a question they wanted to reach out to you directly on, where would you point them?
Yeah, you could easily, I should have put it on the screen here, I guess. You can email me at bill@nhccmn.org. Or you can go to our website, New Hope Community Church, which is nhccmn.org. We're located in Cambridge or Sandy, Minnesota. And you can look under staff and click on me there. You can call the church. We can visit personally. Yeah, I'd love to, any questions you might have or further information you'd want.
Well, we really appreciate that, Bill. You've given us so much to chew on. I just think of these emphases, and I've got a whole page worth of notes here as you're talking. So many things we could have followed up on, but this emphasis on what are you for as a church, and how is it that you are for the flourishing of the people in your community, the businesses in your community, these cross-sectional partnerships in your community. Love the example of, hey, take a little time and a little extra money and go shop at Coburn's. It's local here. Think about how the church brings asset to the community by heading into restaurants, heading into businesses as they're engaged in the life of the community. These examples of partnership and mentoring people outside. Sheridan Project, dealing with student poverty, thinking about the initiative of raising funds for the local food shelf. And I know for myself, I was really touched by the examples of Don and Maddie and Andy and Kim in the video. Just a kind of a real life example of how when we in churches are beginning to talk this way, it translates into people being able to spend those hours in their work life in a way that is infusing them with a great sense of purpose and meaning and recognition that not only is that an avenue for them to kind of serve other agendas outside of their work, raising funds for missions and all that kind of good work, but that the work they're doing itself is valuable. It's valuable to them. It's valuable to the people that they serve through their work. So just thank you, Bill, for the great work that you're doing at New Hope and this powerful example of what leaning into whole life discipleship as a church and community can mean for the people that we're serving. I just want to, as we close here, point you to some resources that we have available. Tessa Pinkstaff, who is helping us here, there she is right on the screen with Bill, has done a great job of collating a lot of valuable resources on this conversation. Those are going to be available for you at our Bethel Seminary Work with Purpose website. If you don't remember this exact URL, you can just Google Bethel Seminary Work with Purpose, and that will draw you to our main Work with Purpose page. But we've got a whole set of videos, archives of resources. For instance, talks like the one that we've had here with Bill will be uploaded and recorded and available there for you. And we've got other resources from national speakers like Ken Blanchard, Andy Crouch, Tom Nelson, and others that you can draw upon if you want to keep learning in this area of faith-work integration. If you'd like to be informed of upcoming events and opportunities and resources, we would welcome you to join our email list. That again is on the Work with Purpose website at that /contact page. Just share your email information with us, and then we will push out to you information on we won't bug your inbox, but on a periodic basis, we'll let you know about important upcoming events and keep you abreast of those opportunities. So we just want to extend our gratitude for each of you for carving out a little time here on this January day to think about what does it look like to bring together our lives of work and worship in a way that brings honor and glory to Jesus Christ. If you want to learn more about Bethel Seminary, reach out to us at bethel.edu/seminary or find more information about Work with Purpose at the link and email provided for you here on this page. Thanks for joining us today. God's blessings to each of you. Bye-bye.